All right, let's jump right into this, shall we? You keep sending me these articles, and I gotta say, using Python to like unlock hidden trends in the podcasting world, well, it's pretty cool stuff. Although I have to admit, when I saw that number in this article, over 4 million podcasts and 30 million episodes, my brain kind of short-circuited for a second. How on earth does anyone even begin to keep up with all that?
Yeah, it's a lot, isn't it? It really is a jungle out there. But the good news is, with a little, well, maybe more than a little, help from Python, we can kind of cut through all the noise and get straight to the good stuff. And that, my friend, is where this thing called the Podcast Index API comes in.
Okay, hold up a sec. API. Now, I'm all for learning new things, but for those of us who don't exactly speak fluent code, what in the world are we talking about here?
So picture this. You walk into this massive, and I mean massive, library. But instead of books, it's bursting with like every single podcast you could ever dream of. That's the Podcast Index. And the API. Think of that as the super helpful librarian, right? They speak the language, understand exactly what you're looking for, and know exactly where to find it.
Okay, so we're basically using Python to have a chat with this all-knowing librarian about what the hottest gossip in the podcast world, what's trending right now. I like it, but what kind of information are we actually getting from this API? Give me the juicy details.
Okay, so get this. We're talking using it to find like the hottest podcasts out there, all based on language. Want to know what's trending in, say, English right now? Boom, this API has got you covered. And it's not just like the podcast itself. We're talking episode titles, descriptions, all that good stuff. It even tells us where to find the actual audio files.
Wait, back up a second. Are you saying we can actually download podcast episodes directly using code? No more messing around with apps or websites.
You got it. This article we're looking at, it talks about using this thing called the requests library in Python, which basically acts like our own personal download button. We just point it in the right direction at the right URL, and bam, podcast episodes on demand.
Okay, stop right there for a second. I'm with you so far. But how does this requests thingy even know what it's grabbing? I mean, what's to stop it from downloading a whole website instead of just the audio file? How does it know what to take?
Ah, that's where the enclosure role comes in. So think of a website like I don't know, a giant shopping mall. The enclosure URL, that's the direct link to the specific store in that mall where our audio file is hanging out. It's our guarantee, like our golden ticket, that we're getting exactly what we came for.
Okay, so far so good. We've found the podcasts, downloaded the episodes, or at least we know how to, but there's more to it than that, right? The article, it mentions something about trimming the audio down. Why bother? Why not just use the whole thing?
Good point. It's all about working smarter, not harder, right? These audio files, they can be massive. Processing them, especially when we get to the whole transcribing thing, it can take forever. So trimming them down just makes everything, run a little smoother, a
Yeah.
little faster.
So we're basically getting the TLDR version of podcasting fame. Is that it? I like the way you think. But on a practical level, how's this trimming actually happening in the code? Is there a tiny pair of scissors hiding in those lines of Python or something?
That, my friend, is where the FmpEG library comes in. It's like our audio editing Swiss Army knife. Super versatile. In this scenario, we're using it to make a copy of the audio file, but, and this is the important part, only keeping the good stuff, the part that we actually want, like, slicing and dicing, but with sound.
Okay, my mind is already a little blown, and we haven't even gotten to the really cool stuff yet. Turning this audio, all these words, into text. Now that's where things get really, really interesting, am I right?
Oh, absolutely. That's where the real magic happens. And to do that, well, we're going to introduce something called OpenAI's Whisper into the mix.
Whisper. Is that like the code whispers the secrets of these podcasts to us or something?
No cat.
Okay, you've got my attention. But why Whisper specifically? I mean, aren't there other tools out there that can do this whole speech-to-text magic trick?
Whisper, well, it's kind of in a league of its own. First of all, it's shockingly accurate, even with all the different audio qualities and accents and everything else you find in podcasts. But here's the kicker, it's multilingual. Remember how we were talking about searching for podcasts in different languages? Well, Whisper can understand them too.
Whoa, it all connects. This is genius. The article, it kept mentioning these different versions of Whisper, like tiny.in. What's the deal with that?
You're on fire today. Those are like different sizes of the Whisper model, and they all have their own strengths. The tiny.in model, that one's the smallest and fastest, which is perfect if you just need the gist of a podcast. But if you're looking for super precise transcriptions, there are larger, more powerful models we can use.
This is incredible. I mean, we've gone from searching through a gazillion podcasts to downloading episodes, trimming them down, and now we're about to turn them into text, all with the magic of Python. This is amazing.
It's pretty amazing, right? And honestly, we're just getting started. Just imagine what we can do when we can analyze not just what's popular, but what people are actually saying in these podcasts.
You're right. It's not just about which podcast hits #1 on the charts. We could, track the rise of new ideas, see what's really resonating with listeners. We could even spot trends before they hit the mainstream.
Exactly. It's like having our fingers on the pulse of the entire podcasting world, all thanks to Python.
Okay, you've convinced me. I am 100% on board. What's next on this wild ride through the world of podcast data?
Well, now that we've got all this raw material, it's time to talk about how we can actually use it to uncover some of those hidden gems of insight.
All right, let's do this thing. Okay, so we've got all this amazing podcast data thanks to our new best friend, this Podcast Index API. We can download episodes, trim them down, all that good stuff. But how do we actually go from raw audio to real insights, the kind you were talking about earlier?
That's where we unleash the true power of Whisper. Remember how we talked about it being able to transcribe audio into text, even handling different languages? Well, now picture doing that for hundreds, thousands of podcast episodes.
Okay, now we're talking. But help me out here. Why is that such a big deal? I mean, it's just text, right?
It's not just text, it's data. Think about it. With data, we can ask all sorts of interesting questions. We could, for example, analyze transcripts from all the top trending podcasts in a specific genre, right? Let's say business or true crime. See what we find.
Wait, so we can see what words, what phrases are popping up the most? That's like having a direct line into what people are really buzzing about.
Exactly. And we can go way beyond just individual words. We can track how certain topics, how they rise and fall over time. Are people talking more about, say, cryptocurrency this month compared to last month? What about AI? We can quantify all of that, see how these trends actually evolve.
This is blowing my mind. We're talking about taking the pulse of the podcasting world, but instead of, a heartbeat, we're analyzing millions of spoken words. This is next level stuff.
It is pretty cool, right? And it gets even better. Remember we talked about the different Whisper models, different sizes and all that. We can actually use the smaller, faster one, that tiny.n one, to quickly process tons of episodes and get a feel for what's being discussed.
So it's kind of like we're skimming through a ton of podcasts just to see what catches our eye.
Exactly. And once we spot something interesting, some pattern, some trend using that tiny.n model, well, then we can bring in the big guns, the larger, more accurate models, but only on those specific episodes. That way we get super precise transcripts when we need them.
Man, this is next level. I'm starting to see how powerful this whole Python and AI combo really is, especially for understanding this whole world of podcasts. It's amazing.
We're just scratching the surface. The more creative we get with our code, with how we analyze things, the more we can learn about what makes podcasts tick.
I love it. So we've talked about finding trends, tracking topics. What other kinds of golden nuggets of insight can we unlock with this approach?
Well, have you ever wondered what makes certain podcast hosts so darn engaging? Or why some episodes just go viral while others just fade away?
You're reading my mind. That's something I've always wondered about. Are you saying we can crack the code of podcasting success using this stuff?
We can definitely try. Imagine analyzing speech patterns, the types of questions hosts ask, maybe even the emotional tone of their voices. We could start to identify the things that really resonate with listeners.
So wait, we could actually figure out what makes a podcast, truly binge-worthy? Just by looking at the audio. That's wild.
It's like we're, holding up a magnifying glass to this whole art of podcasting, right? We can start to see these little things, these subtle techniques that the best podcasters use to keep people hooked. The way they tell stories, the way they use humor, suspense, all of it.
It's funny. We always talk about AI, data analysis, all that, and it feels so big, so complicated. But this actually feels relatable,
Yeah.
We're talking about understanding something that we all experience as podcast listeners. Those moments that make you laugh, make you think, or even make you hit that subscribe button.
Exactly. That's what makes this so exciting, right? We're using these really powerful tools, but to understand something that's already so familiar. And in the process, we're not just gaining insights about podcasts. We're learning about human connection, storytelling, what makes us tick. It's pretty cool.
This has been, without a doubt, one of the most eye-opening deep dives we've ever done. We started with this, like massive, overwhelming world of millions upon millions of podcasts. But using Python and AI, well, we've actually found ways to make sense of it all. We can uncover hidden trends. We can even start to understand what makes a podcast truly great.
It just goes to show, right? Even in a world where there are like a million choices, more information than you could ever consume, there are still ways to find those golden nuggets, those little threads that make us feel a little less lost, a little more connected.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
So, as we start to wrap things up here, I have one final question for you. What would you say to someone listening right now, someone who's feeling maybe a little inspired, ready to jump into this world of podcasts in a whole new way?
I'd say, what are you waiting for? Dive in. Seriously, it doesn't matter if you're a coding whiz or just starting out. There's never been a better time to combine this love of podcasts with the power of technology. Who knows? You might just uncover the next big podcasting trend. You might create the tool that changes the way we listen, the way we learn. The possibilities are endless.
I love it. This deep dive has been a wild ride, and I really hope you, our listeners, are feeling as inspired as I am to keep exploring this amazing world of podcasts. Until next time, keep asking questions, stay curious, and happy listening, everyone.